What's up, people? I'm Jonathan Wiseman. This is another episode of The Grit. Today's going to be a fun one. I got Jonathan Horowitz in here, who comes from a long lineage, long history of working in the hospitality business. And now you're running a hospitality consulting firm. Is that right?
That's correct. It's about 5 weeks old right now.
Real cool. Well, I really appreciate having you here. You're a legend in Houston. So thank you for coming on the show and being a guest.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. This is going to be a little bit different. I was just telling you, this show is going to be a little bit different than many we've done in the past, just because I was in this business for close to 20 years. More on the nightclub and industry side. You're more restaurant background?
Yeah, restaurants and wine bars in particular.
Well, let's go ahead and take it back. First, tell me how you got into the business. But where did you grow up at? I want to learn a little bit about you for the audience.
Sure. So I've actually been in Houston for 30 years. This fall will be 30 years. And I grew up in New Hampshire, of all places. I'm still a Yankee by trade. And came down here to go to college, went to Rice. And never left. Been here literally ever since. So
college brought you here.
College brought me here, and I really, really loved the city. Took to it right away. Had a great experience at Rice. It was fantastic. Loved everything about it. I actually went to Rice on a golf scholarship.
Wow.
Played golf in college. Realized pretty quickly that I wasn't going to be able to make a career out of that, as I had hoped all the way kind of as I was growing up and playing junior golf and all that. That was going to be my career path. That was my plan. That didn't last very long once I got to college and realized that there are a whole lot of really, really, really good golfers out there. And if I was going to do that as a career, I'd probably end up pretty poor. And I didn't want to end up really poor.
I don't blame you.
Got through college and kind of was trying to figure out what to do, and I ended up going to law school. Took the LSAT, went to law school here in Houston. Did that obviously for 3 years. Clerked for a judge for a year, and then ended up going to work for a big law firm downtown. And so I was a young associate in a big firm, and dealt with all of the things that come along with that.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And I was kind of in my late 20s, kind of pushing 30-ish. And I realized that I wasn't going to, I kind of looked around and said, do I really love this? Do I love what I'm doing? And I looked at the older partners in the firm, and, guys have been doing it 30, 40 years. And I kind of looked at them and I was like, is that really what I wanted? Is that what I'm working towards? And so I kind of had one of those moments, where I just kind of looked around at myself and had some discussions internally and said, what do you really like to do? What do you want to do? And I'd always been a food and wine guy. I grew up in a family that really kind of appreciated food and wine. My dad was a wine collector. We traveled a lot, but nobody in our family had ever really been in the industry. I've never worked in a restaurant, never was a server or anything like that. Nobody was in the business, but I really liked it. I liked the hospitality aspect of it. I gravitated towards that. So I kind of looked around and was like, is there anything I can do that would kind of get me into that path? And by chance, it was fall of 2004. I went in for the first time to a little tiny wine bar in uptown Houston called The Tasting Room.
I remember.
And so it had opened in September of 2003. And it was opened up by a husband and wife couple. Ironically, the wife was an attorney as well, and the husband was a former pilot. Had gotten laid off after 9/11 from Continental.
Gotcha.
And they developed this small wine bar concept. And I went in there about a year or so after it had opened, and I looked around. I was like, this is kind of cool. And so I just asked the bartender kind of randomly. I said, who owns the place? And she gave me the business card, and I sent a cold call email, basically describing myself, said I was in your place. I thought it was cool. Here's who I am. This is what I'm doing. And I'm kind of interested in learning a little bit about the business. I don't know anything about the business, but maybe we could get together and talk, and maybe there's an opportunity for me to come in and learn a little bit, maybe pull some shifts or just shadow a little bit or something like that. And so we met right around the holiday time of '04, kind of hit it off, spent a couple hours, had a bottle of wine, talked about things, and they were planning on expanding. It had been well received in the past year, and they were looking for somebody to help them, grow the business. And Jerry was involved in the day-to-day operations. His wife Laura wasn't. She was at Hewlett-Packard as an attorney. And we spent about the next 6 months kind of working out a deal, getting to know each other, and hashed out a deal. And I bought part of the company from them, kind of bought in at that point in the summer of '05.
And how did you fund that? Was it from being a lawyer?
Well, essentially, yeah, okay. Savings. Gotcha. And there was a kind of a sweat equity component to it, so sure. An earn-in.
Very familiar with those.
Yes, exactly. It's a good way to go if you can make it work. And so we started on the path, and I kind of learned everything from the ground up and on-the-job training. And we spent 10 years doing that. So we started growing the tasting room concept. At the end of 2006, we developed and opened the first Max's Wine Dive concept here in Houston. We then took that concept to 9 total locations. 6 in Texas, and then we opened Atlanta, Chicago, and Denver. And
how was that? How was it opening in other cities and states? How
very difficult.
Well, and it's, because I remember running establishments here.
Yeah.
And didn't get near to the level of success you were at. But when I think about expanding into other markets, even if from Houston to Sugar Land, you can drive there. But once you get into Austin or Dallas, how do you manage that? How do you control it?
I think what we learned is the biggest component of that is taking great people from your existing team and putting them there. I've had experiences where we tried to hire everybody new, tried to go in somewhere and do, local people and things like that. And when you have folks coming in for the first time, you're trying to indoctrinate them at the same time that trying to get things open and run things and all of the craziness that goes on with new openings, which you're very familiar with. It makes a huge difference if you have people from your, quote, core team who understand everything, know the way you want it, know the way it should be, have drunk the Kool-Aid for however long, and can go in there and kind of translate the culture as best as possible. It's hard when you're kind of doing it fresh with all kinds of new people. And we learned the hard way how difficult it is to take a brand that has success in one place and try to translate it far away. Sure. So we opened, like I said, Atlanta, Chicago, and Denver. The only one still existing is Denver. And it's been, it was difficult to cultivate that in a whole new environment, a whole new market. And it doesn't necessarily matter how successful you are in your local neighborhood. Sure. When people have no idea who you are, what you're doing, you're starting all over again. Yeah. And it's hard to do that remotely. I can imagine. It's really hard to do that remotely. Even Dallas. And, I was with that company for 10 years, from 05 to 15. And since after I left in 15, it's struggled a bit. They've closed, my former partners have closed a number of restaurants and tasting rooms and Max's and other things. So it's been a bit of a struggle for them over the years, but it was a tremendous learning experience. I mean, I used to joke, and you'll appreciate this, I used to joke that there was nobody in the company who had run more Cat 5 cable through the walls than I had. Because, when you're in a small business like that, you literally do everything. So from the operational side to the marketing, the PR, and everything else, and build outs, and all of that. And I like to get my hands dirty with that kind of stuff. Sure. So that was it was fun, but it was hard.
How important is it to have, standard operating procedures for the locations, building that culture, your core value? How much of that do you actually implement at one location before you're able to expand? And do you wait for that to be a proven business model and have the social proof before you move forward?
Yes. And there's there's kind of two different formulas. One is sort of the mom and pop starting out, develop a following, grow organically. Yeah, totally organically. You got to, you build the following, get a great customer base, have a good product, develop your systems and your processes and your people, which is the most important, developing the people. And then you decide, okay, have I gotten to that point? Am I comfortable enough? Is the market ready for another one of these? And we'll see how it goes. That's one way. The other formula is somebody gives you a big pile of money all at once, whether that's private equity or a big investor, a funder, said, here's your box of money. Go build a bunch of these because I want to see growth and I want to see return and I want to see, and so that is a whole different scenario, which happens. I mean, it does happen. And sometimes it's with a new brand. Sometimes it's an existing brand. And you have these PE guys come in and say, here's $20 million and I want to see 30 locations within the next 4 years. Okay, good luck. I mean, that changes the dynamic completely. Yeah. But more often than not, it's the former scenario where you get to that point where you say, okay, we're doing really well. Cash flow is good. Debt is low. We've got the systems in place and the people in place. And we've created that environment that we think, okay, ready for a second location. And then it really becomes a process of finding a great spot. And this from your experiences, one side of the street to the other can make a big difference. Yeah. I mean, it really does.
Well, and for other people out here, one of my biggest things was finding people.
Yeah. Finding good people. And that's still it.
But staffing has always been the hardest part of my job. And the turnover is always ridiculous. For other people that are aspiring to get in this business or are in this business and watching this, what do you suggest to them, or what little tips and tricks do you have that you don't mind sharing for people, how to source them and then how to keep them?
Yeah. And if anybody's thinking about getting in the business right now, I would dissuade them as much as possible.
I have always. I get
tough.
It is.
It's really, really hard. And truthfully, right now, just the past 3 to 5 years, with unemployment being as low as it is just across the board, and this is everywhere in the country, it's just not locally. Everyone I talk to, everywhere I go, whether it's through the restaurant associations or just network of people talking, number one issue is finding qualified labor. Not even skilled anymore. It used to be, we want to find great, skilled. Yeah. No, give me anybody with some brain cells and a heartbeat and we'll train them.
Yeah.
Anything, because it's so hard to find people right now. So one of the things that, I've always been touting, I guess, in terms of the people side of things is the old adage that everybody knows or probably has heard of: hire slowly and fire quickly. You will know very early on whether or not somebody's going to be a good fit. And that really applies to any level within your particular organization. And so, in this business in particular, personality is huge. And specifically if they're on the front lines, if they're customer facing, kinds of positions, you want to make sure that whomever you're bringing in to your environment is a good fit, and with their personality, with the customers that you're trying to service and all of those things, it should take a while to go through the process, to do the vetting, and to make sure that whomever you're bringing in is the right fit. And then once they're there, like I said, you'll know within 30 to 60 days
easily
whether or not they're really going to be a good fit, and they're going to enhance the culture, fit in with the culture, whatever the culture is that you're trying to develop, you're going to know pretty quickly. The problem that we're seeing right now is that it's so difficult to find anybody that you don't have the time to do the vetting. You don't necessarily fire as quickly as you should because you need the bodies.
Yeah, you need them to
survive and just to open. There were a couple of years ago, I know specifically in Austin, there were a couple of hotels that couldn't open because they just couldn't find the staff to literally open.
Yeah.
And, that's very unusual.
Well, and sometimes you'll see the staff knows that.
Of
and they
course.
know they have you by the balls.
Absolutely.
And so they milk it for what they can.
Well, and what that's forced, and it's absolutely just the simple law of supply and demand.
Sure.
Wages have gone way up, right? We used to pay line cooks, $7 to $9 an hour or whatever it is. Now it's 14.
Damn.
Dishwashers are making 10, 12 bucks an hour where it used to be 6. And so, all of that has changed the dynamic, along with all of the other costs that continue to go up, whether that's, insurance or product costs or anything. Rents are, ridiculous everywhere. But what we see now is, particularly in the hospitality industry, we're being forced to act like bigger companies, provide benefits, give paid time off, all of these things that are typically associated with different industries.
Yeah, with corporate.
With corporate are now in the hospitality industry, even for the mom and pops, because it's so easy for somebody to move and pop over to the next new place and the next hot thing. Because what we haven't seen, even though it's so difficult, what we haven't seen is a slowdown in the growth of the industry. It makes your head spin all the new openings every week. There's 5, 10 new openings.
Yeah, you look at the TABC list and it's just growing exponentially.
Always. And all you have to do is read the paper or other publications around town, and all they do half the time is cover new openings because there are so many. And now we're starting to see a little bit of a shakeout with operations that have kind of been hanging on for a while.
Yeah, dive into that a little bit more. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, things are difficult across the board, and it's a combination of factors. So we're seeing, particularly now, we're seeing a lot more turnover. We're seeing closures that people weren't expecting. You'll see it on social media in particular. It's like, I can't believe that place closed. It was packed all the time, and we love it there, and it's great, and it's a great location. So I can't believe it closed. And what people don't see, obviously, is what's going on the backside.
Sure.
And a lot of people, as I'm sure you experienced, and a lot of people who did this, family members included, who get into the business without really knowing
what it is,
what is involved in it.
I used to see it all the time.
Yeah.
I used to see people with deep pockets that just wanted the limelight.
Right.
They wanted to be whatever they wanted to be for their own personal reasons, and they would just throw money at it and just lose their ass.
Well, and it's and I use this analogy all the time. It's the same in any industry. You can be great at what you do, but if you don't know how to run a business, it's not going to survive. So you look at these fantastic chefs, right? Why are they a fantastic chef? Well, they're creative. They can cook, and people love them. Does that mean that they're going to know how to run a business and balance a balance sheet and handle the P&Ls and do it? No, it doesn't mean that they have those skills. You can be a great doctor, right? You can be a fantastic doctor. But if you don't know how to run your business and you don't know how to make the numbers work, or you don't surround yourself with people who know how to make the numbers work,
it's not going to work.
It's just not going to work.
I think it's a great something to point out.
Yeah, because you have to be the business person first. Unless you're going to have other people do it for you and you're going to be an employee, that's great. But if you're going to be the owner and you're going to do it, you have to understand how to run the business first, and then all those other things hopefully fall in line.
Sure.
So what we're seeing now is a lot of operations where, because rents have gone up, they've gotten themselves into situations where they can't cover their
It's crazy.
Yes.
I mean, I even remember I retired from the business 8 years ago. And the last location where I was at was in City Center.
Oh, yeah.
And rent was $30,000 a month. Actually, for all of it, it was closer to 40.
Yep.
How the hell do you pay $40,000 a month? I mean, you got to do $200,000 in income just to break even for paying the rent.
Yes.
It's absolutely insane what they're going for.
And it's, you think of that on a smaller scale when you're a 1,500 square foot, fast casual mom and pop kind of thing, and the only places you can get into are $30+ a foot.
It's hard to survive.
It's very, very, very hard to survive. So we're seeing that shake out a little bit, partly because of rents being very difficult for people to cover. Labor, as we were talking about, labor's gotten a heck of a lot more expensive. All of the other things that go into running the business have gotten more expensive. You've got to provide, various insurance and healthcare, and product costs have gone up across the board. And so all of those things combine to reduce your margins in an industry where the margins were already slim.
Yeah, they used to be, what, 18 to 22%? 22 if you were good?
If you're killing it just for EBITDA, yeah, if you're killing it, I mean, 20% now is way, way up here. What we're seeing is places that are just kind of moderately successful are making single-digit EBITDA, and they're, barely breaking even in net. So it's harder and harder and harder. And again, we can go off on all kinds of tangents, but
sure.
You're seeing third-party delivery. You're seeing these new things called ghost kitchens, where people, are not building restaurants and they're just renting kitchens and doing delivery only. All of those things are kind of eating into the marketplace. I was talking to somebody a couple days ago. I think it was a chef. It was either chef or a real estate guy. He said he had seen a list of 100 locations, 100 restaurants in the Houston area that were all quietly on the down low trying to sell, trying to get out, just to get out of it because they're having trouble making ends meet. And I didn't see the list, but he was describing some of them, and it was all like, I can't believe that they're actually not as successful as everybody thinks they are, and it's a surprise to a lot of people.
I can imagine.
It really is. Because, and again, it can look great on the front end. The customer sees, a full dining room and all of that, and a celebrity chef or whatever it is, great mixologists, cool bartenders. But
behind the scenes,
they don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
That's amazing.
That's the hard part.
So we're talking about a list that somebody's talking about where there's a lot of companies in the hospitality that are hurting right now.
Yeah, and thinking about maybe is there an exit strategy kind of situation. And again, a lot of allegedly a lot of them are locations that seem to be extremely successful and should be profitable, et cetera. And the point being that you just kind of never know what's going on behind the scenes with particularly all of the challenges that restaurants in particular are facing right now. It's just hard.
Okay. And that's what your company does.
Well, in theory, let's
go ahead and take a step back.
Yeah.
I would like to know, let's talk a little bit, because we kind of left off with Max's Wine Dive and that group.
Yeah, in the tasting room.
What was it that you did after that to lead to you launching your own consulting firm a few weeks ago?
Yeah, just a few weeks ago now. So I did the Max's and Tasting Room thing for about 10 years, almost exactly 10 years. I took a little time off that summer of 15, but I had gotten to know a guy who had purchased two very iconic Houston brands back in the early 2000s. And I kind of kept in touch with him over the years. So the two brands were the original Ninfas on Navigation, which was opened in 1973, really, really well-known Tex-Mex, actually the birthplace of the fajita.
Everybody here knows that.
That's right. Everybody here does. Here does. And then the other company was Antone's Po' Boys, which was actually opened in Houston in 1963. Local kind of sandwich chain. Also very, very iconic in this region. And so the owner of that company reached out to me, and we kind of reconnected after I left Tasting Room Max's. And in September of 15, he brought me on to be the CEO of Legacy Restaurants, which is the company that owns and operates those two brands. And he wanted to accomplish a few things. He had those brands for maybe about 15 years, maybe a little bit less, 12, 13 years. And he wanted to do a few things. He wanted to kind of stabilize the existing operations, improve what was already there, and then kind of get everything prepared for growth. And so that was kind of the way I entered that role. And so spent a couple years stabilizing.
Tell me what
improving.
you mean by stabilizing.
There were not a lot of systems and processes. The blessing and the curse of really successful old brands and iconic brands like that is you've had people who've been there 20, 30 years. Lifers. And they have a certain way of doing things because that's the way they've always done it.
Yeah.
And, change is very, very difficult. There's an amazing resistance to change.
Yeah.
And so therefore there weren't a lot of systems in place. There wasn't a very good structure of people in just how it was being operated. So first and foremost was kind of get a handle on everything, figure out how everything worked, and then make adjustments, with regard to people. And I brought in some folks that I'd worked with before, that, I had relationships with, trusted, etc.
Sure.
And kind of shored everything up and kind of got things on the right path, just in terms of all the operations. And so that took a couple of years. And then we started thinking about how do we grow. And so we got into that phase of the plan, and we did. And last year, in 2019, we opened 3 new restaurants, and it was basically the first time that they had done that in a long, long time. So we opened a new Original Ninfa's in the Uptown Galleria area of Houston. We opened a new Antone's Po' Boys in the Medical Center area in Houston. And then we launched kind of a spin-off brand of Original Ninfa's called Mama Ninfa's Tacos y Tortas. And we did a small little QSR in a food court in downtown, in the tunnels, downtown Houston. So that process took a couple years.
Sure.
Getting it, bringing it to fruition from everything that we had planned. And that got us to basically the end of last year. And so again, through that process, learned a lot. Again,
how are all those locations doing now?
Fairly well. I think the big Ninfa's, is still finding its footing. It's been a little bit more challenging, I think, than anticipated.
Is growing that fast? Well. Is one of the concerns spreading yourself thin if you do try to take on too much?
It is, and we had planned to space it out a little bit better, and through a series of things, and a lot of that having to do with permitting and construction and all that. We had
everything gets pushed back.
Yeah. We had some random guy doing our construction, so I think you may know him.
Yeah. We'll give him a plug. Josh Wiseman.
That's right.
Construction Concepts. BuildItHouston.com.
BuildItHouston.com. So they all ended up we had one in the summer and then 2 very close together in the fall and winter. And so building the teams, getting the training in place, and all of that, it's hard, and it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of people's energy. And while you're doing all that, you can't forget about the existing businesses.
Sure.
You still have to run everything that's going, and so you can't really take your eye off the ball. And so there's a lot of juggling that goes on, and things get missed, things fall through the cracks. It's tough. What you try to do is just see the bigger picture and hopefully have a good team on the ground who can execute the vision. So we did all that last year and got to the point where I had been there about 4.5 years. Our owner, through a series of discussions, and basically he started to get more involved in the process, which was not necessarily anticipated. And then he essentially decided that after last year, there wasn't going to really be any more growth. And so that didn't necessarily jive with what I had planned. And so, I started thinking about what am I going to do next and what did I want to do? And based on everything that I had been able to do and everything that I learned over the previous 15 years or so,
it's
kind of led itself.
Of
Yeah. And at this point, I've basically done, other than being a chef, right? Because I'm not a chef. I can cook, but I'm by no means a chef. But essentially, I've done everything else in the entire life cycle of a restaurant operation, from concept creation to design to build out to openings to all the PR and marketing and media, which I really love, through growth, scaling, and demise.
Yeah.
You know, literally everything in between.
And throw a running Cat 5 in there somewhere.
Sure, why not? Why not? It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
I had one night where I was literally, as an aside, I was stringing little crystal beads onto a chandelier at like 2 a.m. I mean, literally, because everybody else had gone home, and we had to get the chandelier
Yeah,
up.
you had to open at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Right. So I'm sitting there with tweezers, literally trying to put these little crystals on the chandelier.
Stuff that Josh and I went through. And the hour to pull it off by the time it was, I mean, what we were doing 30 minutes before we opened the doors up on ladders. I mean, I just remember at all of our locations, or most of them,
it's inevitable. Everybody's
like, there's no fucking way you're opening tomorrow.
Right.
And it's like, watch.
Yeah.
And when those lights go on, I mean, but
it's showtime.
Yeah.
It's showtime.
You're in the ceiling tiles, you know, till 3 a.m. every single night.
Yeah. We opened one Max's Wine Dive, the one in San Antonio. I remember we were supposedly opening for business that night, dinner that night at 5 p.m. The furniture showed up at like 2.
Been there.
You know?
Been there.
It's like, okay, I guess we can open.
Yeah, I think Johnny's Sports Bar, we did that. Furniture was arriving as the first game was playing. People were just standing around drinking. Just
why not?
Give them free beer. They'll forget about
exactly. Well, you know, if you can, just get them to help you put the furniture together.
There you go.
Make it a party.
Absolutely.
So I started kind of thinking again about all the experiences that I had, and it really kind of came down to 2 things for me, and I've been able to kind of just distill it into these 2 things. First being, at this point in my career and everything we were just talking about, there's probably no better time for me to do this personally. If I'm ever going to do it, if I'm ever going to, you know, be on my own, be my own boss and all of that other stuff, now's the time. So I've had all the experiences. I've been very, very fortunate. I know a lot of people in the industry. Apparently, it seems I've got a pretty decent reputation around town. So all of those things combined kind of told me, if I'm ever going to do this, now's the time.
Yeah.
This is it. So that was the first reason. The second thing is, as we've just been talking about, there are a lot of people who need a lot of help. And, you know, everybody says, don't start a business unless you know there's a market for it, right? If there's a need. Well,
there's a market for it.
In my opinion right now, there is a significant need for somebody to be able to come in with an objective eye from the outside and take a look at things and say, this is working, this isn't working, here's what you should consider, or, you know, cut bait, time to go, you know, analyze that. Or successful places that are either just starting out or wanting to grow, here's a bit of a playbook on how you can scale, or you want to build something new, here are the steps in the process. So so
whatever the situation is, whether you're trying to get out of a jam or you're doing fine and you're ready to scale.
Right. Or just make things better.
Yeah.
Or make things better.
Optimize it.
Right. Exactly. And so
improve your margins by a few percentages.
Oh, and those
they add up.
Every single percentage point is absolutely crucial. So, you know, like I said, I launched February 1st, so about 5 weeks ago. This is, I think, the end of the 5th week. And the response has been really good, you know, so far. Been doing a lot of networking, a lot of meetings, just trying to talk to anybody and everybody I can in terms of finding out who's out there, what the needs are. And, you know, got a couple of really good clients lined up, a couple more coming online. And they've been everything from business evaluation, right? You know, been struggling. Take a look at this. Can it be fixed? Should it be fixed? If so, how, right? How do we make it better? Or should we change, you know? And so there's been that kind of business evaluation.
For companies that are falling a little behind, or they might be on the list that we were talking about earlier, or they need a little bit of help, what is it that you can bring to the table? How can you help them?
Yeah, so my goal is to go in and be able to really evaluate things. If it's existing operations, I want to be able to go in and take a look at everything from a holistic perspective and say, what's working, what's not? Can it be improved? If it can be improved, how? And here are some strategies that you can use to try to improve it. Or here's what I've found, and here's why it's not going to work, and it probably can't be salvaged. And, you know, I've found that sometimes people just want to to hear the truth, because they're so deep into it themselves.
Sure.
They don't want to believe that it could be,
or they don't know,
or they don't know.
They don't. And I think that's great that you mentioned that, because there's a lot of times where companies don't and they just keep digging a bigger hole.
Right. Because they don't know how to get out of it. And that's kind of, you know the phrase, the death spiral, right? Where, people are throwing good money after bad, and, trying to do whatever they can, and they're cutting here and cutting there. And eventually you just kind of cut so much that you can't survive.
Yeah.
You just can't survive. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is folks who are either just starting out or trying to develop a new concept. I can go in and, provide some areas of expertise in, this is how you can do it. And this is what you need to be concerned about. And the other benefit really is, I've been fortunate enough over the years to develop a really good network of, the old trusted advisors, right? You want to have your trusted advisors. And so there are certain people in the industry that I can go to and say, you know what, if you've got an HR issue, here's where you should go. Talk to this guy. If you got an insurance question, here's that. If you need health coverage, here's where you go for that. And so I've got a couple of clients that, one is an existing restaurant group that is launching a new location, new concept, big new restaurant, 6,000 square feet, something they've never done before.
Can you plug them yet or no?
We're on board. It's official. So there's a really great brand that's been around in downtown Houston for about 40 years called Treebeards.
Okay.
And they've been lunch only. They've got 5 small locations in downtown Houston. They've been lunch only, and they announced about a month or 6 weeks ago that they're going to open their first ever big full service restaurant.
Wow.
In Memorial area of Houston. So 6,000 square foot restaurant. The owners, they've never done the dinner service, because it's always been lunch only in downtown, and they've never done a full bar for a restaurant. So they have asked me to come in and help them develop the bar program. I can
see how that could be scary for them.
Oh, yeah.
Never venturing there.
Absolutely.
And so it seems like a perfect fit for you to come on and help with that.
Right. And so I've gone out and I've found a chef to help with the culinary, and a bar consultant, mixologist, to help with the bar. And so now I've got a little bit of a team. And so we're going to, really help them get through the opening process, which is exciting. There's another one I'm working with, which is a development company that's building a new kind of entertainment complex, a large 30,000 square foot kind of bowling alley, arcade, Top Golf, simulators, and all kinds of big, massive project. And so they've asked me to come in and help with basically the development of the food and beverage program. So those are kind of the creative, kind of launching sort of things, which I love doing. I mean,
sure.
That's
the fun part.
That's the fun part, right? Running them every day isn't the most fun. But when you get to build them and be creative and bring in people and see something, grow and develop and come to fruition, that's really cool. So I've got kind of those things going on, and also sort of the business evaluation. I had a long meeting with a fairly successful group yesterday, about 15 locations of a family-friendly kind of fast casual concept, and they've got some units that are underperforming, and we talked about how I could go in and kind of evaluate their systems and evaluate their business and some of their people, and kind of give them advice as to what could or should be changed to try to improve things. So I don't know if I'm going to get that gig yet, but we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, and to speak to that, when there is a company that has quite a few locations and there's a few that are underperforming,
right,
and the other ones are carrying the weight of that, what is something that you would suggest to somebody in that situation, or how to attack that?
Yeah. So if you get past what I would call a location issue, right? If it's not just about where you put it, and you realized, man, I just never should open in this neighborhood, or this is just totally the wrong place for this concept. If that's not your issue, then I would start first and foremost with the people. Who are the people in there? I mean, I'm talking employees, not customers.
Sure.
But how are your people contributing to what you want them to be doing. How are they contributing to the success of the place, or are they at all? And that usually in some form or fashion is where the issue lies.
Yeah.
And it can be anything. And when I say, people, it's not that they're necessarily bad people, right? Or I'm not talking about them stealing or anything like that. For example, you could have a great chef in there, but if he can't control inventory and doesn't know how to do the ordering and isn't controlling food costs, then you're not going to make any money. Could be a great person, mean really well, but if they're ordering too much or waste is a huge issue, and your food cost is 40+%, you're just not going to make any money. And so when I say start with the people, it's an evaluation of not only are they contributing to the culture and are they trustworthy and all of that, it's are they doing the job technically like they need to be doing to make it successful.
Yeah. Well, and I know you're in the hospitality business and you help companies that are in that business. Specifically for the audience that's watching, what different areas or niches within the hospitality business, because it's kind of a wide umbrella now. I think it's spread out a little bit. Under that umbrella, which companies do you typically work with?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's focused pretty heavily on restaurants, in general, and it can be any kind. And because most of the time, the elements of what you're looking at, what you're doing are pretty universal, right? So, again, people, systems, processes, locations, all of that. And then not even getting into your area, which is all the marketing and the PR and how you're doing media and, are you in social media? What's your website look like? And all of those other elements that kind of go into it. So I focus right now pretty heavily in the restaurant sector, but a lot of these things, again, are transferable, particularly your people, your processes, and your product, right? So if you watch The Profit with Marcus Lemonis, the 3 Ps, that's the first, it's where he starts, and it holds true. It's universal. It's people, processes, and product. And so, those things are transferable. This new entertainment center thing that I'm working on now is a little bit different.
And is that new to Houston?
This concept, this location will be.
Okay.
You may be familiar with it. It's the old Palace bowling lanes on Bel Air that's being redone. And so they've announced it's no secret what's going in there. But that's it's
a big area,
massive project with all kinds of moving parts. It's not just restaurant bar. So there's a lot of other considerations there. The other thing that I'm personally doing, and being an attorney, it's not that far of a stretch, but I'm also in the process of getting my real estate license. So as I'm working with various concepts and various companies, if they are having lease issues, real estate issues, whatever, I can add that as a service. Or if they say, well, this is all going really well and now we're ready to expand, well, I can go find you some locations and I can be an actual real estate agent in the commercial real estate world.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
you can. Location's everything.
It is.
Other than the 3 Ps,
right.
Location is everything.
It makes a huge difference for sure.
And so if you can add that to the portfolio to not only help people find the right location, but also to know what's going on in the industry and what's standard when it comes to tenant improvement, rent abatement.
Yes.
I remember the first locations we had, I didn't know what rent abatement was.
Right.
And I'm sure there's many others that get into the business and don't realize they can get $20 to $80 a square foot for TI.
Right.
And get help building out their location. So
yeah, it's ironic because before I left the house this morning, I was actually reviewing a lease for somebody who's trying to get out of it. And there were a couple things in there. I was like, I can't believe that provision is still in there. And of course, everything is written so landlord friendly. And there were a couple things in that particular one, which I know you can get negotiated out right on the front end. It's like, I'm not paying you for that. Right. I mean, that's ridiculous. And usually landlord is like, okay, sorry. And we'll take it out. But there are a lot of really great commercial real estate agents that work with the restaurants and bars and stuff in Houston. And that's great. I feel like I have the opportunity to add a little bit of a different dimension coming at it from an operator's standpoint, having been on the other side of the table for so long, to really kind of know how to deal with it, what locations are good, to be able to look at it from a business perspective and say, look, man, it's a great concept. Let's look at your numbers. What do your pro formas look like? What are you projecting? Well, now let's compare that with the lease you're about to sign.
Yeah.
And that's not going to work, right? You just shouldn't do it, which is a little counterintuitive, because usually the real estate agent's just like, sign the lease so I can I can get the commission and and get it done. I want to be able to kind of go in and do it a little bit differently, where it's like, okay, we really need to do an evaluation of the whole thing, and can you survive here? And what is your worst case scenario in your pro forma? Can you still make your rent? And can you cover your nut every month? So I want to be able to add that in as an additional kind of service and offering.
Sense.
Yeah.
I mean, and I can see that when you're looking at it, through a lens, a bird's eye view. Right. You're looking at a whole package, a long-term relationship, not just closing a lease and getting a one-time commission and walking away.
Right.
So that brings a lot of value to the client.
Yeah, and I want to be able to stick with somebody and say, okay, well, now we've found you a great location. The lease is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, it's a long-term investment.
It is very much a long-term investment. Usually it's at least 5 years or sometimes 10. And so then I can say to them, all right, now let's figure out how we're going to build this out. Let's look at your budgets. Now I can help you with your opening. You want to do PR and marketing media, I can help you with that as well. And just try to be as full service as possible. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to following that journey as well.
Yeah, it's
for
pretty
people
cool.
that are looking to get into this business. No bullshit, no nonsense.
Don't do it.
What would you, that's my question. What would you tell somebody looking to get into the restaurant business that's never been in it before in the Houston market?
Okay, so I have like a ton of things that come to mind immediately, right?
Besides, don't do it.
Well, besides, right. Once we get past that and we've decided, okay, we really are going to do it. Make sure you know how to run a business, right? Understand numbers, know your way around a P&L. Ideally, somebody doing it will have had some experience in the restaurant industry. So you know how to do monthly inventory and what kind of state sales taxes and franchise taxes and all these other things that you're going to have to deal with. Some sort of business acumen, right? Other than, and you've seen this a million times, other than I've been sitting at this bar for 5 years. It's a great spot. I really like the bartender. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I'm going to give him a pile of money so he can go do his own place. That just never works.
How many times have you seen that? Too many.
Way too many. Way too many.
Yeah.
So understand business first. Second thing is find good, experienced people. Surround yourself with those people. Get a good group of trusted advisors. Find a good lawyer, find a good real estate agent, find a good insurance guy, find a good contractor, all of those things. It takes a village, right? It literally takes a village. Understand that whatever budgets you think you have, it's going to be twice as expensive.
Always.
In my opinion, the number one reason why places fail, and people always talk about the failure rate, the 2 to 5 year failure rate in the restaurant industry is like 80 to 90%, right? And it's brutal. And in my opinion, the number one reason that happens is that people are undercapitalized from the beginning, and they just don't understand the amount of cash that it takes to get something from concept to stabilization after opening.
Well, and I love that you say stabilization, because concept to opening is what most
that's a piece
people,
of the puzzle. No,
that's what most people are looking at. They're short-sighted. It's, this is my idea, this is my concept, if I can just get the doors open.
Right.
They don't realize they need to cover the overhead for another year minimum.
Yeah.
And make sure they got an extra year in the bank just in case.
Right. And that's where people often fall short. And
I've done it myself, so I know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it happens because, you have to plan on unexpected expenses coming up and delays and all of the other things that go into it, you can have the best laid plans, everything, and something will happen, whether it's a natural disaster or the city screws you over on your permitting or whatever it is, can't get your liquor license, who knows? But all of that every single day costs money, and it adds up so quickly. And then, the worst part is when you're delayed at the very end, you've hired a bunch of people and you're paying them and they got no place to work, but you can't stop paying them because you don't want to lose them. And now it's a snowball. It's a complete snowball. So,
and not a good one.
Not a good one. No, not a happy snowball. So
yeah,
I mean, that's what I would say to somebody who really is intent on getting into the industry, is understand that the amount of free capital that's going to be needed is twice as much as you actually anticipate. That's
a
really
great nugget of advice.
The number one thing.
It's
because,
so true.
Folks go out and get loans, or they raise money from friends and family, and
everything goes under budget.
Yeah,
you never open on time because of permits, and you got to cover
same thing every time.
Yeah, it is.
It's the same thing every time. And then if you're fortunate enough to get through that whole process, and get open and start operating, my next suggestion would be, don't blink, right? Don't ever leave it alone. Be as active and involved and, as conceivable possible that you can. Just stay in it, because until you get a really solid foundation and you've been open for a while and you got great people in place and you trust them and things are stable, you have to be attentive. It is truly like having a newborn.
Yeah,
it really is. People talk about, this is my baby. Well, it really is, because the minute you turn your back, something bad happens. Right?
I know it varies, but how long would you say it takes in the average business to get to stabilization? How many months or years?
Well, I differentiate a bit between stabilization and profitability, because profitability doesn't necessarily mean you're stable. There are places that become profitable after a few months, right?
But they're not
in the
stable.
black, but they're not necessarily stable. I would say it's a 9 to 12 month thing. If you're comfortable after 9 to 12 months, comfortable mentally, physically, not financially, but if you're comfortable with the way things are going after 9 to 12 months, probably doing okay. I mean, and you're not scrambling and, trying to make payroll every 2 weeks and all of that kind of stuff. That's where I would tend to feel a little bit more comfortable that things are under control and at least got your arms wrapped around how things are going. So that's, it varies, and it also depends on the size of the operation.
Gotcha.
But there can be a lot of pressures, particularly in that first year.
With all the headaches and all the bullshit related to this business that we both know all too well.
People on the outside don't see that.
They don't. I could tell you many stories, and I'm sure you could do the same. What is it? Why do you do this? What are you most passionate about? With all of the headaches, the bullshit, the things you have to go through, the responsibility, the liability, it's all on your back when you come in. Why are you doing this?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different now, because I'm not necessarily doing it myself. When I was kind of really deep involved in it, there were a number of reasons. One, I was really learning a ton, which was great. I mean, I loved that. I like the environment. It's part of my personality in terms of being social. The sitting in a law firm office and working behind a computer all day wasn't really feeding that. I'm very analytical and very practical. And I like to be able to look at something, take it apart, figure it out, put it back together, and see if we can make it better.
Yeah. And
the practicality comes in when you say, well, it's just not going to work and you need to punt. It's really kind of that social aspect that drew me to it. And I will tell you, in the 15 years that I've been doing this, I've been very, very fortunate to be involved in a lot of different organizations. I was president of the Houston Restaurant Association for a while. I'm very involved at the state level now in the Texas Restaurant Association. And I have met some of the most amazing and wonderful people just through the business
Sure.
over the years. And it's been a learning experience. It's been just fantastic in terms of the types of people that get involved in the
Houston's
business.
just such a great city.
Well, it's
and
a
some of us
fantastic city.
take it for granted and
Yeah.
just don't realize it.
No, overall, it's a tremendous city. And as we know, it's now being touted truthfully as the most diverse city in the country. And that holds true especially in the restaurant industry in
Yeah,
Houston. There's
absolutely.
60 different cuisines, countries and nationalities represented. It's a vast, vast market, but by and large, and it's a tremendous community. The community is fantastic. It is so together and so supportive. I mean, it is rare. I mean, really rare. And this has been this way for 15 years for me being involved in it. I never hear about people backstabbing and sniping at each other. And all you hear about here locally is who's helping whom, how they're doing it, how they can get involved. I mean, when we were opening some of the new restaurants, I had people reaching out from restaurants that I hadn't heard from. Can we make food for your staff? We just want to bring you some foods as you're doing your training, things like that.
That's amazing.
All these events, the charitable events that get put on, all the organizations that benefit from the industry, the chef community and the restaurateur community here is extremely tight, very close, very, very supportive of one another. And I'm sure it's like that in other cities. I haven't lived in other cities, haven't been involved in other cities in the industry, but I can't imagine it's any better than it is here. I mean, it's really, really fantastic. So, back to your original question about why to do it. I think I get more fulfilled by just being able to be around these types of people and these people in this community and be involved in this community. I mean, I love that. And now doing this new role, I have even more opportunity to meet more people and to help to do that kind of project-based thing where I can come in and maybe make a difference, add some value. That to me is pretty rewarding. So I like that.
Yeah, I love it too. It's a fun business.
It's very similar to what you do.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, great. Anything else you want to leave with the people before we check out of here?
I want to know about your name. Why are you Jonathan and not John?
We were, I think it just had to do with age.
Okay.
My dad, when I was younger, called me John.
Okay.
And, my dad was very strict and stern and, John. And when I was young, it was all I knew. And then when I got into my teens, on my mom's side of the family, my brothers, everybody called me Johnny. So I was Johnny. I mean, had Johnny Sports Bar, as I got older. Yeah. And so I was Johnny forever. But then when I got into corporate and started running my marketing companies and doing a little bit more business, and Johnny was always, Johnny Wiseman. He was that crazy club kid and owned the nightclubs. He was on the bar pouring liquor down people's mouths. And, I think that the Johnny Wiseman had a persona or, to him. And I wanted to graduate from that. Yeah. I wanted to change that. So instead of going back to John, which reminded me of my dad, telling me to go to my room and grounding me, I just went back to Jonathan.
Gotcha.
And it's funny because I'll get an email from my dad, and it's John. Right. And I get cringe.
So the reason it came up, I was talking about my change, I started out, I told everybody when I was growing up that my name was John. I was named Jonathan. And my mother used to get on my butt all the time when I was growing up. She said, your name is Jonathan. Okay. If I wanted people to call you John, I would have named you John, right? Your name is Jonathan. So I went all the way through college as John, much to my parents' chagrin. So then when I went into law school, I was like, this is my opportunity to change, right? I'm going to do this career thing. I'm going to meet all new people. So from that point forward, I was Jonathan, and I've been Jonathan ever since. So other than my college buddies, right? Nobody calls me John. Now, however, my mother calls me John. And I'm like, I spent all this time because you gave me so much crap about people calling me John, and now when I call her, she talks to people. She calls me John. I'm like, this
hilarious.
is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. So it can't win.
That's amazing.
It just can't win.
We're gonna have to get your mom on the show.
Oh God,
ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate y'all tuning in. This is Jonathan Horowitz with Horowitz Consulting. If you're in the hospitality business, you have any questions, reach out to him. We'll put his contact information below. I'm Jonathan Wiseman. This is another episode of The Grit. Appreciate y'all tuning in.